There is a special kind of death that happens while you are still breathing. It is not depression, though it might feel like it. It is not burnout, though exhaustion follows. It is the slow, silent extinguishing of your inner fire, that primal spark that once made you feel alive, driven, unstoppable. Have you ever caught yourself going through the motions, mechanically completing tasks that once excited you? When was the last time you felt that electric surge of purpose coursing through your veins? That moment when you realize the fire inside has dimmed to barely glowing embers is both terrifying and sacred. Because here's the paradox. Sometimes you have to let the old fire die completely before you can ignite the real one. Today, we're re-diving deep into the alchemy of rekindling your inner flame. Not the borrowed fire of others' expectations, but your own authentic blaze. Let me tell you something that might sound counterintuitive. Your inner fire dying isn't a tragedy. It is an initiation. Carl Jung understood this when he wrote about the nigredo, the blackening phase of alchemical transformation. The privilege of a lifetime, he said, is being who you are. But before you can be who you truly are, you must first stop being who you are not. The fire that dies is rarely your authentic flame. It is the borrowed fire, the one fueled by external validation, societal expectations, and the relentless pursuit of achievement that was never truly yours to begin with. When this fire burns out, you are left in what I call the sacred darkness, a void that feels empty but is actually pregnant with possibility. Friedrich Nietzsche captured this beautifully when he said, "You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star." The extinguishing of your inner fire isn't unto the end of your story. It is the necessary death that precedes rebirth. In alchemical terms, this is the solve phase, where everything must dissolve before it can be reconstituted into something purer, more authentic. But here's where most people get stuck. They panic when the fire dies. They frantically try to reignite the old flame, not understanding that the old fire was built on a foundation of sand. They consume more content, chase more achievements, seek more validation, all while wondering why nothing feels meaningful anymore. The truth is, your inner fire dies when you've outgrown the fuel that once sustained it. The ambitions that drove you at 20 may suffocate you at 30. The relationships that once energized you might now drain you. The work that once felt like a calling might now feel like a cage. This isn't not failure. It quais. Evolution. Pause and take a breath. Feel into this moment. Can you sense the difference between the frantic energy of borrowed fire and the quiet, steady pulse of authentic flame? The dying of your inner fire is your psyche. S way of saying, we redone performing. We redone pretending. We redone burning fuel that isn't ours. Sich, it is an invitation to descend into the depths of who you really are, beneath the layers of conditioning, beneath the masks you've worn, beneath the stories you'd be told yourself about who you should be. This is what I call the void between selves, that liminal space where your old identity has died, but your new one hasn't yet been born. It as it's uncomfortable, yes, it is disorienting, absolutely, but it is also where the real magic happens. Because in this void, stripped of all external props and borrowed flames, you finally get to meet yourself. The fire that emerges from this darkness isn't to just reignited. It is transformed. It burns differently. It burns with a quiet intensity that doesn't need external validation to sustain it. It burns with purpose that comes from within, not from without. It burns with the kind of steady, unshakable flame that weathers storms and grows stronger with each challenge. Let me tell you about Sarah, a 34-year-old marketing director who contacted me after what she called her quarter-life crisis, Part 2. For 15 years, she'd been the golden child of her company, the one who stayed late, who said yes to every project, who built her identity around being indispensable. Her inner fire had been burning bright, or so it seemed. Then, one Tuesday morning, sitting in her corner office overlooking the city, something shifted. The email she was typing felt meaningless. The meeting she was about to join felt like theater. The promotion she'd been chasing for months suddenly felt hollow. It was like someone had turned off a switch, she told me. Everything I'd worked for just stopped mattering. Sarah's first instinct was to power through. She booked a vacation, thinking she just needed rest. When that didn't work, she signed up for a leadership course, thinking she needed new skills. When that failed, she considered changing companies, thinking she needed a new environment. Nothing worked because she was trying to reignite a fire that had served its purpose and naturally extinguished itself. The fire that had driven Sarah for 15 years was built on a foundation of proving herself worthy of love and respect. It was fueled by the need to be seen as successful, competent, indispensable. But at 34, having proven herself over and over again, this fire had nothing left to burn. Her psyche was ready for something deeper, more authentic, more aligned with who she was becoming rather than who she thought she should be. Stop for a moment. Inhale, exhale. Can you relate to Sarah's experience? Have you ever felt the crushing weight of achievements that no longer bring joy? The breakthrough came when Sarah stopped trying to reignite her old fire and started sitting with the darkness. She began journaling about what she actually wanted, not what she thought she should want. She started saying no to projects that didn't align with her values. She began the difficult work of untangling her self-worth from her professional achievements. It took 8 months, but eventually, a new kind of fire began to emerge. This one wasn't fueled by external validation. It was fueled by a deep sense of purpose she discovered when she stopped running from the void. Sarah eventually left her corporate job to start a nonprofit focused on mental health awareness, trading her corner office for a mission that set her soul on fire. The new flame burned differently, quieter, steadier, but infinitely more sustaining. In the ancient alchemical texts, there is a symbol called the Ouroboros, a serpent eating its own tail, representing the cyclical nature of creation and destruction. Your inner fire follows this same pattern. It must consume itself to be reborn, not as a repetition of what came before, but as a fundamental transformation into something new. The dying of your inner fire is what alchemists called the nigredo, the blackening phase where everything must be broken down to its essential elements. Just as the alchemist must dissolve gold to purify it, you must dissolve your old identity to discover your true nature. This isn't to destruction for its own sake. It was the necessary preparation for the albedo, the whitening phase where clarity emerges from chaos. Think of it as the phoenix process, but not the sanitized version we see in movies. The real phoenix doesn't just catch fire and rise again prettily. It burns completely, becoming nothing but ash. In that ash, in that apparent death, the seeds of transformation are planted. The new phoenix that rises isn't torn to the same bird that died. It has a few once. So evolutionarily different, carrying the wisdom of its own destruction. Your inner fire dies when you've outgrown the container that once held it. The ambitions that drove you at one stage of life become the very things that suffocate you at the next. This isn't failure, it as the natural progression of consciousness. You not broken, you metamorphosing. The fire that emerges from this alchemical death is what I call the authentic flame. It doesn't burn with the frantic energy of borrowed purpose or external validation. It burns with the steady, unshakable intensity of someone who has walked through their own darkness and emerged knowing exactly who they are. This flame doesn't do I not and for in. Need constant feeding from external sources because it is fueled by the inexhaustible source of your authentic self. The Ouroboros teaches us that endings are beginnings in disguise. Your inner fire dies so that your inner fire can be born. David was 42 when he found himself standing in the ruins of his abandoned architecture firm, staring at blueprints that would never become buildings. The 2008 financial crisis had claimed his business, his marriage had ended, and his carefully constructed life lay in rubble around him. But it wasn't to the external losses that broke him. It was the realization that he felt nothing. I thought I'd be devastated, he told me years later. Instead, I felt this weird emptiness, like someone had scooped out my insides and left me hollow. David had always been driven, always had the next goal, the next project, the next milestone. But standing in that empty office, he could not remember why any of it had mattered. For months, David existed in what he called the gray zone, a place where nothing excited him, nothing motivated him, nothing seemed to matter. Friends offered advice: start a new business, take a vacation, try therapy. But David had stumbled into something deeper than a life crisis. He'd fallen into the void between selves, that sacred space where your old identity dies and your new one hasn't yet been born. The turning point came when David stopped trying to resurrect his old life and started exploring the ruins of his former self. He began taking long walks through the city, not to solve anything, but to feel the ground beneath his feet. He started volunteering at a homeless shelter, not to fix anything, but to be present with others who had also lost everything. He began writing, not architecture plans, but poetry about loss, about emptiness, about the beauty of broken things. Take a beat and feel the silence. Can you sense the difference between the panic of losing yourself and the peace of finding yourself? Slowly, imperceptibly, something new began to emerge from David. Just darkness. Not the driven, achievement-focused fire of his former self, but something quieter, deeper, more sustainable. He discovered he had a gift for working with people in transition, for holding space for others in their own dark nights of the soul. David eventually became a grief counselor, trading his blueprints for the more mysterious architecture of human healing. The fire that emerged from David's ruins was an trying to rebuild what was lost. It was creating something entirely new. It burned with the quiet intensity of someone who had been to the bottom and discovered that the bottom wasn't a place to fear, but a foundation to build upon. The death of your inner fire isn't to the end of your story. It is the beginning of your real story. It's the moment you stop living someone else as life and start living your own. It's the sacred pause between who you were and who you became. Your authentic fire doesn't need to burn like anyone else. It doesn't need to look impressive from the outside or meet anyone's expectations. It just needs to be real, to be yours, to burn with the steady flame of someone who has walked through their own darkness and emerged knowing exactly who they are. The phoenix doesn't rise from the ashes because it went round tijan sari fi inti strong. It rises because it men fi high fidran fido. Sanity thi willing to die. Your inner fire dies so that your inner fire can be born. If this journey resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more insights on navigating life, HUI's deeper transformations, hit subscribe and join us for the next chapter of this exploration.